Welcome back, everyone. We're so excited to have you today. We're back with conversations with Delpha and Naomi, except that Naomi is having a fabulous time on vacation somewhere in Europe, which I will not name, but I am mad jealous that she's having the best freak time. She has promised to take me with her the next time. I think we should do the podcast from Europe. I see no issues with this. But in the meantime, I am not alone. Today, we have a guest. We have Jackie Baldwin with us. Jackie, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Delpha. And I am such a huge fan of this podcast. I even was listening to this while I was paddling on the Connecticut River. You inspired me, your voices and your conversation. It was getting rough. It was my third day on the water, and I needed that little bit of inspiration. I thought, oh, I know what I can do. So I quickly put it on my phone, and I loved it. It got me through quite a few miles. So it's such an honor to be here. And yes, I too am jealous that Naomi is having a blast, but I can't wait to hear all about it when she gets back.
I know she deserves it. And I'm so
That,
honored that you listen to the podcast, that you love it as much as we do. For everybody on the podcast, Jackie is awesome. She does finance. She is an author. She is like, I want to be athletic. I'm not athletic. Jackie paddles and I don't. And I'm just like super impressed, like just like all of her capabilities. But she has a book out now. The book is called The Bend in the River. And I'll put a link to her book on the show note for this episode. I want to talk about the book, but first, Jackie, like, why did you write a book? And I asked as somebody that coaches authors, I always want to know, why does an author feel the call to put their stuff out there?
sure. So to answer that question completely, I do need to kind of go back in time a little bit. So 1986, quite a few years ago, I was finishing up a degree I was actually going to write for television. That's what I was going to do.
Oh, wow.
So I was in college and I was finishing up. And at the time, my oldest brother, Kevin, was running an agency in Connecticut for a large insurer. And at that time, insurers decided, in order to stay relevant with the clients, that they needed to add an investment planning arm. And so what they did was they added a broker dealer. My father had recently retired early as a quality control engineer from Pratt and Whitney, and was kind of, looking for stuff to do. And so my brother said, "Hey, Dad, do you want to run this broker dealer arm? Would you like to start a second career?" My dad's like, "Sure." And so then my dad said to me, "Hey, Jackie, I'll pay you what you're getting paid at the fabric store that you're working at to put yourself through college if you could come help." I was like,
Oh, that's great.
why not? Well, that's
Yeah.
how I fell in love with being a financial advisor. So with that, I've always had this desire to write. And I thought, well, that's definitely put on the back burner, if not just gone for good. Then in 2020, when COVID hit, Liz Hill, who is Greenheart Living Press, put out
Yes.
a call for authors to collaborate on a book called The Great Pause.
Yes.
So
Great book, by the way.
I love it, right? And
Yes.
I think that that's going to be a gem for generations down the road who really want to know like what's going on and what happened with COVID. But
Yeah.
I digress. So I answered the call because I thought, oh my gosh, this is my chance to start writing again. So I wrote a chapter for that. Then Dr. Davia, who runs Ladies Power Lunch, put out a call a few months after
Yes.
that for a chapter. And I'm like, well, the first one went so well, I might as well do another chapter. Both were best-selling books. And at that point, I had been starting more on the back side of my deep healing from a lot of trauma and difficult times in my life. And I thought, and at that time, I had started really paddling a lot, kayaking a lot. And I thought, I've had experience. And then I got it in my mind that I was going to paddle all 410 miles of the Connecticut River, segment paddling it. So
Okay.
we'll get to that probably later. But
Yes.
the bottom line is I thought I have something to share with people, because as I was out on the water for hours at a time by myself, I discovered that a lot of the experiences I was having on the water, my healing journeys and some of the chaos that I would experience, was much like life, which is where the bend in the river came, the name. Because as I would go around a bend in a river, now the picture on the book I
Yeah.
took, and that was a beautiful morning. I thought, oh, this is going to be a fantastic morning. Within 2 hours, I was in chaos and mayhem. So that's life, right? We go
That is.
go around a bend in the river. Things could either be going well or not well. And we turn a bend in the river or bend in our life, and it can either resolve and be peaceful, or we're going to hit chaos. It's how do we deal with that? What do we do with it? Do we choose to pull the blessings from that, or do we let it take us down? So that's why I wrote the book. That's a long answer to your question.
I love it though. And I will tell you, I've read the book. I love the book.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. It's awesome. And I highly recommend folks read it. I took notes on the book. And generally I don't take notes in a book. So I was so interested in the messages, and you do talk about how is it that you react. And as a reader, I also thought, how do you show up? Because in the book and in your stories, you talk about, you have your moment, you have your freak out moment, because we're all allowed a freak out second, okay?
Yeah.
We're all allowed. And you had the doubt and you had the thoughts, and then you made a choice
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to take a step back, to just kind of take a breath and say, all right, we've had the freak out. What are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
And to move on. And I was just so impressed that that message was really woven throughout your story, that no matter what happened, you had the wherewithal and fortitude to just kind of pause and say, take a breath.
Absolutely. But I do want to just share with all your listeners that that wasn't always the way.
Okay.
So I'm 59 right now, and I will tell you that the ability to be able to do that repeatedly, no matter what hits me, didn't really come about until just probably 5 years ago.
Wow.
Before that, because I had not healed from many traumas throughout my life, I was a constant fight or flight, body. Like I was just constantly feeling that way. And it was when you're in that place. So I don't want people to be discouraged and say, well, I'll never get like that. Believe me, I wasn't either. And I wish I knew. The only regret I have in life is that I wish I knew now, much earlier in life. But the good news is I now know it, and I can work through things, and I have the whole rest of my life to enjoy in this new body. But that's why I wanted to write the book, because I really want people to hopefully get that healing done sooner. So if they're, no matter what age you're at, but I also just want to say, you're never too late. It's never too late to do this and get that healing and get that ability to then move through after the freak out, move through to, the calm. And what lessons did I learn from that? And how did that strengthen me and encourage me to keep going further and step further and further outside the box, quite frankly?
How did you build up to be able to get to that point where you can have your freak out, have the moment, and then say, all right, we're gonna do this. We still have to move through. What happened that got you there?
So healing comes in layers, in many different forms,
Love that.
modalities. So it's not, I would have to say, first and foremost, my faith has been, I couldn't have done this without God in my life.
Yeah.
That was a huge change for me. And then going through traditional talk therapy, I had done that for years, and it got me so far. It really did help. I'm not saying it didn't, but it's layered. So I did the talk therapy. I did life coaching with Naomi, by the way.
Yes.
She's incredible.
Yes.
That helped so, so much. And I thought, oh, I'm there now. I'm good, until I wasn't. Then something else crept in. So then I did EMDR therapy to
Oh,
really
yes.
get rid of that final trauma that resides. I am not a psychologist, in the amygdala, I believe it is, of your brain, where
Yes.
there's no amount of talking that's really going to get rid of that. You have to go through a different type of therapy. And then for me, EMDR worked so well for me. And that is when I felt totally broken open and free, that last layer. But it's been gradual all these years of just walking through layer upon layer upon layer, and then getting rid of people and places that were not serving me anymore, that had become, I don't want to use the word addiction, but when you're in that place, it's almost like, okay, it's comfortable. It's what I know. Even if it's toxic and not good for you, it's what I know. So I just keep that in my life. And I had to realize I needed to shed some of those things in order to really get healed the rest of the way. And so now I've surrounded myself with people and places that just serve me and fill me up.
I love that. And I often wonder when I'm talking to folks, whether it's an author or just a regular coaching session or whatever the situation is, that I hear well, I want to grow, I want to change, and I want to heal. And it is in layers. You're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a shedding of the skin.
You have to.
Yes. And with that shedding,
mm-hmm.
I call it my habit people.
Mm-hmm.
The people that
I love
that you have a habit with, that are just
mm-hmm.
you're so comfortable and you're so used to them, even though they're no good for you.
Yes.
It's such a habit. And part of the habit is the feeling of guilt, because it's not good, it's not right, but you also love them and care for them, and letting them go because it's no longer their season with you. It's a hard thing to do, but there's growth in that as well. There's growth in that. So I will tell you my moment when I actually started, and again, it was through life coaching. And my coach knows this. She's awesome. I am a hard person to coach. I've been through therapy, just like you. I've been through therapy. I've done all the things. I can talk myself into sounding fantastic and still being in turmoil inside.
Yeah.
And so we had come to this place of just almost like a roadblock in my session. And she just started asking random questions. And hey, what do you have to do today? Is there something that you have to do that you can't get yourself to do? And I said, yeah, there is. I need to return this shirt to my friend who sells cabbie. And she's like, oh yeah, just call her. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. And no, I won't return it. I'm just gonna keep it. And I mean, it's a nice shirt. It's not cheap. And she said to me, what do you mean you're gonna keep it? I'm like, I'm gonna keep it. She said, why? Like, because I don't want to call her and tell her I don't like it. And she said, why? And it was the questioning of the why that brought me to tears. I wasn't about returning a shirt. I know how silly I sound right now.
No, not at all.
At that moment, I felt guilt. I felt shame. How could I tell my friend that I didn't like the shirt? I was going to return it. Is it going to return? Is it going to ruin her business? I had all these random, highly negative, overinflated thoughts. And my coach was sitting there and said, oh, you're doing this right now. Oh my gosh, we're hitting a breakthrough and you're doing this right now. I'm like, no. So I literally had to text her, tell her.
While you're in your session?
While I'm in my session. In my session. I had to take my friend and say, I'm so sorry to return this shirt. I just don't like the way it looks. She's like, no problem. I'll send your return package. I'm like, okay. Well, little did I know that that moment, as small as that might be, was one of the biggest breakthroughs for me as far as both self acceptance and self worth. And I will tell you, in your book, that's how you brought that memory back to me in the story where you're like stuck on the river. It's the middle of the night. You have the dogs, and you land in this part of the inlet that's jagged rocks, and it's sucks. And now you're gonna camp there, and it's like a painful, terrible night. You wake up with a little backache. You're like, we're just going to move forward. Sure enough, at the bend of the river, there's a sandy, beautiful beach that you could have slept at comfortably and everybody would have been happy. And no bears would have come to get your food. None of that stuff. And literally, it was just like just that little extra push of just do it.
Right. How often in life? I know. I love that. I love that. And congratulations to you. Because it's no small task. I used to ruminate over everything and come up with all these different scenarios. Like if somebody didn't call me back, right?
Oh my gosh.
Or I text somebody and they didn't text me back. I was like, oh my gosh, they must be mad at me. And now I'm going through like, the Rolodex, the thing in your head, and you're like the film, and you're going through going, well, what did I say here? What did I do there? Did I hurt them? Should I apologize for this? Are they hating me? Am I ever going to get back? They were busy. It was
the playback. The playback is real.
And not. But the playback was real. And I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And so I am to the point where I'm like almost nauseous that this was my life.
Yeah.
All the time. I would ruminate about everything because everything was my fault or I was going to ruin everything for everyone else. And reality is that's not the case. And if I do feel like I legitimately hurt someone or I said, or I was, out of place when I made a comment, I now feel confident going back to that person and saying, hey, I am really sorry. The other day I said, blah, 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 blah. And I am sorry. That wasn't fair. That wasn't a really response. And I'm sorry. And most of the time when it doesn't happen often, but when it does, I know I need to do that or it's going to eat away. And so I'll go back and then they usually are saying, thank you so much for saying that. And yeah, that did hurt me. But I also realized my reaction to you wasn't so great. And then we hug it out and it's like, okay, all better. The old me wouldn't have ever even been able to go up. I would probably just not speak to them again. Not because I was mad at them, but because I was so full of shame and so brokenhearted about it that I would have felt like I couldn't even approach them about it because they're probably so hurt and mad. Like that, I would take it to that level. Isn't it?
Yeah. But you know what? It is, but then at the same time, here you are being able to talk about it, and having grown from it. And I think that that's what's important and that it is in layers. And I tell people all the time, and this is from my coach, so I'm totally stealing it from her. She taught me this lesson and I love carrying it forward. But we tend to have, and even in your book, this is represented, we tend to have similar experiences over and over and over.
Yes.
To have the opportunity to practice ours. And the more resilient we become, the less frequent those situations come up. And when they come up again and again and again, they become less severe. It's our reaction that changes that, in my opinion, in the journey. And to me, that kind of circles back to another point you made, which I'm very, and it was a great reminder for me. I'm very spontaneous and I will try everything. But you got to plan a little bit, man.
You got to plan a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be over. There's such a thing as over planning to the point where you just never get off the dime and actually do it because you have thought of every possible scenario and the things that you can't control are it obviously if they're really that dangerous, you shouldn't do it. But I know sometimes in my past I might have been like, oh no, I can't control that situation, so I'm just not going to do it. Where in reality, if I've planned out the big things that are going to like harm me, the rest of it, I need to take a chance. I need to experience something new, and it may bring some challenges, but you can over plan as well. So there's a happy medium in there somewhere, you know?
Yeah, I tend to plan a little bit, but this was a good reminder for me of, like take a step back and plan a little. Think about it. You don't even have to plan. Just think about it for a second. Is
Yeah,
it really like the thing? And if it's not, then don't do it.
right.
And maybe you need a break, and maybe you just need to, read the signs too, people out there. Read the signs. When your phone has no power, when you have no snacks, when you have no water, just stop for a minute. Stop for a minute and read the signs. That was so powerful.
Yeah.
And I love the part in the book where when it's happening again, and you literally say, I know what you're thinking, reader. Did you not learn from the first time this happened? And I was like, yes, girl. What happened? But isn't that
Yeah.
the truth? Isn't that life, that we will repeat patterns until we learn our lesson? And even
Yes.
then, they'll show up again.
Oh yeah. So I just did 55 more miles on the river.
Oh my gosh, good for you. Good for
And
you.
so day 2 was a bear of a day because I had, no pun intended, there were no bears. I was happy to say I did not see any bears, and bears did not take my food. But the second day, I had 2 portages, and a portage is where you have to actually take your boat out of the water and walk around an obstacle and then get back into the water. Well,
Okay.
I have a 12-foot boat. It isn't inflatable, but I'm not going to uninflate it. I have all my gear for, well, essentially 4 days because I was 4 days camping, and I had my dogs. So anyway, I made it round a dam. I did that portage, but lesson learned too, the books don't describe it adequately. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so I got around the first dam. Then I had 2 portages in one day. So the second one, I had to go around some falls. And
Wow.
so there was this big orange warning sign, warning, read the signs, right? So
Yes.
I'm reading the sign, and I'm looking at the thing, and the portage was described right after it, and everybody had told me, oh, it's easy peasy. Well, I don't know what easy peasy is, but I get off. It looks like it's going to be good, except I get out and I'm looking around to where I have to bring everything. And all I see, there's a tree that got pushed into what I thought could have been the trail. So I'm like,
Okay.
I can't, I mean, like the root ball, I couldn't get around it or over it. Then I'm looking, okay, and there's this really steep hill, and I get everything out, and I'm like, all right, I guess we're going to have to do that. I get it partway up the hill. Anyway, long story short, I was exhausted and I was frustrated and I was scared because I thought, this does not seem right. So I sat down. There's nothing that a good PB&J can't solve. So I sat
Yeah.
my sandwich because I'm like, I'm also hangry right now. So I sat down with the dogs and I said, let's just take a break. I got to eat, and then let's think this through. Well, I ate the sandwich. I opened my map back up, and I could see on the GPS that I was actually not at the right place. So all this time, I spent an hour and a half there struggling, and it wasn't even the right place. I had to go closer to the falls. But see, I was afraid.
Okay.
I was afraid. So I went up to the falls, and then I found it wasn't quite easy peasy, but it was better than what I thought I was going to have to do. But again, like, I was starting to mildly freak out. Like, what am I going to do? So I just took a break, ate, thought it through, got my bearings again, and then realized I wasn't in the right place. So I had to just keep going forward. And then I found it. We got in, we did the falls, and we got around the falls and we were good. But it does continue to happen. But this time I was like, all right, Jackie, you just need to take a break here. You're running on adrenaline right now and you're not able to think straight. Let's just sit down, take a break, and try to figure this out. And that's how we need to go through life, is
Yes.
getting these places where it feels impossible, or it feels so chaotic, or it feels like we're alone. How many times do you feel like you're alone when you're in the middle of something and you don't even know who to reach out to? Like, what phone
Yeah.
do my friend call? If, what friend do I phone if I could phone a friend, or whatever? We just sometimes need to just take a break. And
I
so,
will tell you, I love this. I tell people that I coach that are going through, I tend to coach people that are in transition for roles and things like that, or that are having like strife and conflict at work.
yes.
Um, sometimes you have to play dead.
Yeah. Perfect.
And sometimes you have to play dead. And that is so much more for you than it is for them. And
Yes.
what I mean, you don't have to play dead. What I mean is just bend a little,
Mm-hmm.
let them have their way, just to really make a difference that you
Yeah.
win or lose. This is not a win or lose. This is just some time. Then while you're bending and letting them have their way and letting the temperature lower in the rooms you're in, you are taking a break, and you are self-assessing, and you're getting your PB&J and your coffee and your piece of chocolate.
Oh,
Maybe a glass of, right? It's a must. And maybe a glass of wine. But then for a minute and stop. And in my everyday life, I just remind myself, sometimes be still. I'm a person in motion. And sometimes it is about being still.
Being
And that's
still, calming your inner self. Because when you are getting let me say, not you, when I get spun up, I can't think straight. Nothing makes sense. And then I unfortunately start reverting back to my old ways of ruminating.
Yeah.
So I know that's not where I want to be. So I've got to just stop, cool down, like you said. Sometimes it does require me not, putting a line in the sand. If I'm dealing with another person, it means let's make this fluid back and forth between us. I don't need to dig in where it's not important just to say I did, right? I don't tend to be that kind of a person.
Yeah.
Anyway, by nature, but yes, especially if you're in like a boardroom, or, I sit on several boards, and there are times where people come to that meeting and they bring their stuff that they've been dealing with before they got to the meeting, and it sometimes transitions into the room. I'm guilty of that too. And so we each need to give each other grace.
Agreed.
And step into that and be like, okay, let's think that through. Or maybe if it's not something that needs to be addressed, maybe we can address that tomorrow, or let's follow up on that, or let me think on that for a minute. And that gives both parties a chance to I need to sometimes step out of what I have stuck in my head, my vision, and think about it. And sometimes they also need to have a chance to think about it, and then we can come back and find a resolution. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, just take a step back and just gain perspective. And it's not complicated.
No, and also I think, you and I had chatted before we went live about perspective on life. And, when you go through some stuff, you realize like what's really important and what is really not important.
Agreed.
And where are my priorities? And if it is not a hot priority for me, I tend to not, it's not that I don't care, but I tend to be much more fluid and much more like, sure, I'll go with that. No worries, no problem at all. When it comes to my family and my dear friends, and my clients, those are my priorities. And those are the people that I want to make sure I'm taking care of. And even within there, there's different priorities, right? Like our family is probably, for me, my family is everything. And
Yes.
so it's nice to know that, okay, so there's stuff going on and, but I don't need to really get all tied up in a knot about that. It's not really that important to me.
Yeah, and I will tell you that no matter what, when you put yourself first, you always win. And it's not selfish. And I don't mean it in the way of, well, I'm gonna put myself before everybody else and I'm just gonna be like this person that pushes people around. Not like that at all.
No, it's putting an oxygen mask on yourself first.
On yourself first.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself first. And that's what you did with your PB&J. You took care of yourself first. And then the rest of the world could happen.
Yeah,
So that's awesome.
for sure.
Jackie, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us a little bit. I'm just so happy to see you. And for everybody that's listening to us, the book is The Bend in the River by Jackie Baldwin. It is on Amazon, and I will put a link in the show notes.
Thank you.
Jackie, where can people find you?
So, if people want to follow my journey on the river, you can go to CT River Pups, PUPS, because I travel with my 2 dogs, and that's on Instagram. So, you can go on there and kind of follow our journey. If you wanted to reach out to me or, find out more about my business and for financial planning, that's on finarch.com. It's for B and Dell Financial Architects.com. And then I'm also, you can find me on Facebook, both business and personal, and on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for joining us. For the listeners out there, thank you so much. I was telling Jackie earlier, I cannot believe we have well over 200 listens. We have a bunch of followers, which is amazing. We love you.
I follow you.
Thank you, Jackie. This is awesome. We're so grateful to everybody for collaborating with us. So if you like this show, please give us a rating, give us a follow. And if you don't want to give us a follow, that's fine. But share this with somebody that will find value in it. And with that, thank you so much. Next time you'll see us, Naomi will be back, and we have to ask her all about her nice little trip because she's having a fabulous time.
And I will look forward to when that episode drops. You can guarantee I'll be one of their first listeners.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Catch you on the next one. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.